Fungi, Bitcoin, and decentralization. Such a critical topic for the future of humanity. Biomimicry. Realize that everything connects to everything else. Leonardo da Vinci. Mycelium is the neurological network of nature. Paul Stamets. This is what we are biomimicking with our architectures. Re-architect society based on the separation of money and state. Let's read that again. Re-architect society based on the separation of money and state. Deflationary assets. Bitcoin teaches us to delay consumption today in order to reap greater benefits tomorrow. The mycelial archetype is embedded in our species. The mycelial archetype is an emergent property of biology, which means the World Wide Web and Bitcoin were inevitable. I have the links in the bio to two very influential articles that I read on this. Brandon Quittam's article and Dan Held's article. And also a very awesome fungal video and some important Bitcoin nomenclature. DeFi means decentralized finance. DeFi is the antidote to macro uncertainty. DeFi is a catalyst for human evolution, meeting basic needs and unleashing gifts. Facts. Fungi have been around for 1.3 billion years, surviving all 5 great extinction events, the most successful kingdom on the planet. More fungal species than plants and animals combined. The largest organism on our planet is a fungal network, honey fungus measuring 2.4 miles across in the Blue Mountains in Oregon. Trees cannot survive without underground fungal allies. 95% of plants use them. Again, 95% of plants use mycorrhizal networks, fungus root networks, two-way resource exchange underground, harmony. We will biomimic that with our human architectures. Fungi are capable of helping save the bees. Bidirectional communication across long distances, even across species lines. Distributed network archetypes are found throughout nature. Mycelium, dark matter, neurons, the internet. Clearly this strategy works, otherwise nature wouldn't insist on replicating it. The advent of decentralized digital money seems less novel and more inevitable. The decentralized network archetype, DNA, is Lindy. Fungi and humans. Both fungi and animals inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. Plants produce their own food through photosynthesis. They're autotrophic. Animals and fungi must find their own food, heterotrophic. Fungi produce enzymes to externally digest their environment. Animals evolved to have internal stomach/brains, whereas fungi pursued external stomach/brains. The opisthecont for a broad group of eukaryotes, including animals and fungi. Humans share 50% of our DNA with fungi. Fungi produce mushrooms, which then release spores, seeds, that attempt to colonize life in a nearby location. Mushrooms are simply the reproductive organ. Mushrooms are to the mycelium what apples are to a tree. Fungi effectively domesticated photosynthesis machines, algae, to harness a self-sustaining food source. We can think of these algae as little solar panels bolted onto fungal networks, which made colonizing virgin dry land possible. Medicinal fungi. Antibiotics, anti-cancer drugs, cholesterol, and ergosterol synthesis inhibitors, psychotropic drugs, immunosuppressants, and fungicides. Fungi products have been long used in traditional medicine. The ability to identify beneficial properties and then extract the active ingredient started with the discovery of penicillin by Alexander Fleming in 1928, which was a factor in the tripling of our population. Since then, many potential antibiotics were discovered, and the potential for various fungi to synthesize biologically active molecules useful in various clinical therapies has been under research. Pharmacological research identified antifungal, antiviral, and antiprotozoan compounds from fungi. Biomimicry. Networks form a decentralized consensus on how to use resources, when to reproduce, and what strategy best defends the organism. Nodes determine what software they wish to run and enforce the consensus rules they support accordingly. Miners determine which transactions to include in blocks. Exchanges, wallets, and merchants each steward large groups of users. Each participant in Bitcoin voluntarily chooses how they wish to participate, and the aggregate consensus represents the network. From the left, the human heart, lightning, the human brain, mycelium, roots from a tree, an aerial view of the Grand Canyon, branches from a tree, and the cosmic web of the universe. Ori Brofman, Flat Organizations and Edge Knowledge. During the information economy, decentralized or flat organizations are more effective with radical inclusion. They resist corruption, minimize bureaucracy, and push decision-making to the extremities, where individuals, nodes, have the most up-to-date information about the problem at hand. Life without a centralized point of failure. Slime mold, designing the Tokyo subway system. Ancient fungus slime mold incentivized to recreate Tokyo subway system. Each subway stop node was marked with slime mold's favorite food, oat flakes. After 26 hours, the slime mold grew to connect all the nodes/stops in a more efficient design than the centrally planned committee of engineers hired by the Japanese government. Slime mold can design a better network in a day. Wow. It's beautiful how it fractals out up here. In C, it goes out with all of its little sensors to find the most oat flakes. And then it creates a superhighway after it finds that most efficient path. Bitcoin versus altcoins. Some people think altcoins will implement cool new features that will eventually outcompete Bitcoin. The opposing camp believes Bitcoin will eventually absorb all the best features after they've been tested in the market, which makes alternative currencies unable to compete over the long term. The market sends signals for Bitcoin to create features that satisfy unmet demands or improve security as new threats emerge. Vertical and horizontal gene transfer. The separating barrier between these two is fading. We've been doing vertical as humans for millions of years via reproduction, but we are doing horizontal meme transfers which impact our epigenetics for millennia, especially in the IT age. We think the same way fungi actually do horizontal gene transfers will be how Bitcoin slurps up ideas produced by altcoins. Fungi recycle all matter into base elements and act as our planet's immune system. Decomposing organic matter transform rocks, branches, leaf litter, dead animals, and oil spills into their base elements, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, etc. Fungi trade these valuable elements with nearby organisms. Our forests would be buried in hundreds of feet of leaves and branches if fungi didn't decompose them and redistribute the nutrients. Fungi eating rocks is the main reason we have topsoil, which enables us to grow food. It took fungi over 1 billion years to produce just the 18 inches of topsoil that we have today. Fungi unlock stranded resources. A tree cannot reuse its own leaves or branches as the carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus are locked in an unusable form. Fungi exploit arbitrage opportunities in their ecosystem. Fungi broker resources underground via mycelium between species to ensure the health of the entire ecosystem. Venezuela, Turkey, Argentina, etc. hyperinflating their currencies. Bitcoin steps in as a non-sovereign SOV. SOV share of voice, measure of the market your brand owns compared to your competitors, gauges brand visibility in your industry. Blockstream launches satellites, able to broadcast Bitcoin transactions to mitigate catastrophic events. Bitcoin social contract. Bitcoin protocol automates the contract that is agreed upon on the social layer. The social layer determines the rules of Bitcoin based on the consensus of its users. Fungal reproduction. Mushrooms are sexual organs of fungi, phallic spores, seed, delivery systems. Some fungi can produce mushrooms with enough force to break through asphalt. Ejaculates, basically, releasing millions of spores, then decomposing back into the ground. Small percentage of the spores will travel nearby and form new fungal colonies. New colonies might stay underground for several years before the reproductive cycle continues again. Spores are lighter than air, which makes travel easy. Theoretically, spores could catch an updraft and leave Earth's orbit. They're on a short list of biological matter capable of surviving the cold vacuum and radiation of space, panspermia. Bitcoin is similar with the reproductive booms where media floods in and normies become interested. Mushrooms die, hype cycles, while mycelium, Bitcoin, thrives underground. Cave painting of our oldest representations of hallucinogenic mushrooms in the world. Discovered in northern Algeria, estimated to be over 6,000 years old, depicted bee-headed mushroom shaman. Mushrooms in his hands and growing out of his body. Bitcoin. 21 million Bitcoin cap. 100 million Satoshi for each Bitcoin. 2.1 quadrillion tradable units. Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper as the Bible. There are early forum post interpretations, hermeneutics, Roger Ver, Bitcoin Jesus in early days, spreading the good word by gifting Satoshis. Bitcoin's birth introduced two new traits, openly programmable and decentralized. Rules of Bitcoin. 1. No confiscations. 2. No censorship. 3. No inflation. 4. Anyone can verify rules 1 through 3. There's the traits of money. You can see fiat is very low in durability, scarcity, established history, censorship, resistant, unforgeable, costliness, openly programmable, and decentralized. Gold is low in portability, divisibility, and openly programmability. And Bitcoin is only low in established history. That's it. It's high in everything else. Miners' rewards for successfully completing a block halve every 210,000 blocks, or on average of every 4 years. So when Bitcoin was first published, people were earning 50 Bitcoin per block, and then it dropped to 25 about 4 years later. And 4 more years later, dropped again to 12.5. Currently, it's at 6.25 Bitcoin per block. And a block is every 10 minutes. Somewhere around 2,140, the last Bitcoin will enter circulation. Bitcoin inflation versus time. As you can see here, a very, very solidly strong amount of monetary base is now in circulation, enough to where the inflation rate has basically decreased almost all the way down to 0. So the monetary base is at about 80% or so, and because of that, the inflation is basically near 0. And you can see how it started and where it's going. Hodlers are the revolutionaries. Available supply decreases as more hodl, which means to hold. So people hold their crypto. Float is the supply actively being traded, is increasingly constrained. Private keys are lost or people die without leaving private key instructions to anybody. Each new user puts more upward pressure on the price. CoinShares reports that 77% of Bitcoin's energy consumption is from renewable sources. So you can see there's that Genesis hodl, and then there's another hodl, 2011, and then another one in 2014. And there are your jumps in price. Collective consciousness of our planet is changing, convincing people that money isn't green paper or centralized bits, plus it doesn't need to come from our government. Money is the ultimate network effect. Its value is determined by the number of people you can interact with. In a fairly religious sense, there are financial incentives to recruit new members into the congregation. With each new user that buys Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin directionally increases, benefiting previous hodlers. Then that new user is incentivized to convert their friends, who then convert their friends. As price increases, so do the incentives to improve security, as evidenced by the difficulty adjustment, one of Satoshi's most brilliant contributions. Price increases, mining becomes more profitable, more miners contribute hash power, better security makes Bitcoin more valuable. Bitcoin is the antivirus, mushroom medicine. The Bitcoin fungus is quietly spreading underground. With each passing day, Bitcoin is eating more fiat, becoming more robust, more decentralized, and more Lindy. Globally, we are facing unprecedented debt to GDP levels. We'll look back at this archaic fiat banking experiment with a facepalm. For cryptocurrencies, the great filter is surviving nation-state level attacks. He who has the gold makes the rules. The Cantillon effect. The uneven expansion of the money supply. Central banks print new money, then the closest to the monetary injection point, big banks and big corporations, profit from new cheap money, spending extra dollars before prices have increased. By the time the rest of the population receive the new money, price inflation has already begun. Masses receive their new dollars after prices have increased. Neutrality of money. A change in the stock of money affects only nominal variables in the economy. Such as prices wages, and exchange rates, with no effect on real variables like employment, real GDP, and real consumption. The central bank does not affect the real economy by creating money, number of jobs, size of real GDP, amount of real investment. Any increase in the supply of money would be offset by a proportional rise in prices and wages. There's the great filters, the amount that we've made it through, and then the very difficult filter, and how important it is for us to get through. So crucial. I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. Nathan Mayer Rothschild. Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes the laws. Mayer Amschel Rothschild. It's very attractive to the libertarian viewpoint if we can explain it properly. I'm better with code than with words, though. Satoshi Nakamoto. And me, Alan, I'm better with words and art than I am with code, Satoshi. I got you. I will distill all your profundity into ELI 5 and awaken our world. We start with mycorrhizal networks and inclusive stakeholding. It's not survival of the strongest or most intelligent. Survival of the fittest means most adaptable to change. So it is not the strongest of the money that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Just as novel organisms emerge via speciation to occupy newly created niches on dry land, Bitcoin evolves its DNA code to produce new phenotypes, novel features, to take advantage of new niches. Bitcoin enables novel financial use cases that were not possible before. This increases the size of the economic pie, thus generating wealth for society. Novelty provided by Bitcoin. The first and only implementation of absolute scarcity. A global, near-instant, apolitical settlement system. Neutral money not easily captured by special interests. Uncensorable medium of exchange for black/gray markets. Democratization of basic financial services. Non-sovereign store of value with negligible barrier to entry. Increased inclusive stakeholding, mycorrhizal biomimicry, leads to increased neurodiversity, gift actualization. We will globally reap the emergent creative fruits in much-needed design, art, engineering, entrepreneurial, scientific, and spiritual innovations, tackling our biggest challenges like the SDGs. Without access to a common economic language, Bitcoin, many people are unable to participate in global trade. As Bitcoin becomes ubiquitous, it unleashes human productivity. Freelancers in Venezuela have used Bitcoin as a bridge currency to access USD, which effectively evaded financial controls. A grander vision of the future where everyone speaks the same economic language. A global market for talent leads to more goods and services produced for a cheaper price. Increased trade with developing countries will help lift people out of poverty. Instead of letting companies fail, we bail them out. The broken incentives create a moral hazard, making the entire system more fragile. Disproportionately hurting the working class. Heads I win, tails you lose. No one bails out the antelope when it's eaten by the lion. Bitcoin increases economic skin in the game, which improves the feedback loop, leading to economic evolution by natural selection. Economic Darwinism for the win. Bitcoin simply needs to outlast its competition. The Tenrec, the common ancestor to all living placental mammals, an underground survivor from 65 million plus years ago, asteroid collision. Yeast. The especially relevant fungal organism brewer's yeast catalyzed human evolution. Fermented drinks like beer and wine provided a safe way to stay hydrated, as water often contained pathogens that killed ancient man. The first crops we cultivated were also the best grains for brewing beer. 12,000 plus years ago, did we settle down for food stability or to brew more beer? Without fungi, say goodbye to all beer, wine, chocolate, bread, and many medicines such as penicillin. The real problem with humanity is the following. We have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. E.O. Wilson. Money is the most important coordination mechanism for society, and fiat is running us off a cliff. Instead of arguing red versus blue, it's time we address the root cause of our societal malaise. It's time to unfuck the money. Fiat is the exception, not the rule. Throughout most of history, humans coordinated around a free market for money, mainly gold and silver. Bitcoin is an extended phenotype for humanity. It lowers the trust required for a global society to communicate value, which enables more sophisticated cooperation. Re-architect society based on the separation of money and state. AKA natural money, a huge win for Civ. It's our duty to form a symbiosis with this force. Bitcoin was the best performing asset of the last decade. It's a deflationary asset. Bitcoin teaches us to delay consumption today in order to reap greater benefits tomorrow. Rather than charge the fiat system from the inside, rather than change the fiat system from the inside, we can put our energy towards a parallel system. Bitcoin is the largest implementation of public key cryptography the world has ever seen. A world with strong cryptography shifts the balance of power towards defense. Defense from tyranny, censorship, overarching governments, and surveillance capitalism. Cryptography allows us to assert our natural rights. Bitcoin protects free speech, ensuring we can vote with our money. Free speech is the foundation of open societies. Forming symbiosis with Bitcoin preserves freedoms for our future generations. Bitcoin metabolizes fiat infrastructures. Mycorrhizal biomimicry metabolizes self-dealing. We can use fungi to clean up oil spills, halt erosion, create natural pesticides, and even decompose nuclear waste at Chernobyl. In a similar manner, Bitcoin can be used to clean up our dilapidated fiat infrastructure. Mycoremediation equals applied mycology, improve our environments, our processes. The legacy system was designed to siphon wealth from the bottom to the top, most notably during each financial crisis. And that's best explained through the asymmetry that Nassim Taleb teaches, where the bankers get all of the reward, but they take none of the risk because they can socialize the losses to the taxpayers. Since time is money, this forced wealth transfer system should be considered systemic time theft. We were promised flying cars and all we got was 140 characters. Peter Thiel. What about colonizing Mars or reducing the risk of civilization enders such as pandemics or nuclear war? How about Dyson spheres, asteroid mining, or eliminating infectious disease and infant mortality for good? Bitcoin accepts short-term price volatility in exchange for long-term systemic stability. Fiat offers short-term price stability at the expense of long-term systemic risk. We don't account for the fat tail risks, such as banks blowing up or global pandemics. Bitcoin enables an anti-fragile money system. Bitcoin enables an anti-fragile monetary system. Verifying Bitcoin transactions. Mining hash rate equals miner's CPU spits out hashes, 64-digit numbers, at different rates until they arrive at a solution. Mega hashes per second, giga hashes per second, or terahashes per second. Hashing equals computing. Those countries who produce their own energy and mine Bitcoin will have further geopolitical advantage over countries reliant on importing energy. Bitcoin is fully auditable, hard-capped, and offers financial settlement quickly. The perfect neutral money for untrusting nation-states to settle debts. Under this light, Bitcoin is money for enemies. Just like fungi colonizing dry land was the catalyst for biological evolution on Terra, Bitcoin is a catalyst for human evolution. Titration. The World Wide Web. Mycorrhizal biomimicry. The video game. Conscious experience biomimicry. The Bitcoin. Mycorrhizal biomimicry. the VR, conscious experience biomimicry. The mycelial archetype is embedded in our species. The mycelial archetype is an emergent property of biology, which means the World Wide Web and Bitcoin were inevitable. The reserve currency does not last forever. There's Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, France, the Britain, and then the US. And it's going to be overthrown by Bitcoin and decentralization technologies, biomimicking mycorrhizal networks. And over the passage of time, as you see, where we are right now is still only the early stages. It's about to transition to become a truly reliable store of value. And then, before you know it, it will be a widespread medium of exchange, and it'll be a convenient unit of account. And then it's going to be full global money. Everything will be Satoshis. Everything will be Satoshis. Frictionless, borderless, hyper efficient, hyper safe, decentralized. So get on board early. See these patterns. Ultimately, this is a pattern. It's making an analogy between mycorrhizal networks and decentralization technologies of cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin. See that profound analogy. If you can see that profound analogy, you will do very, very well these next couple of decades. But you have to see that profound analogy. We will do our best to continue disseminating information like this that really attempts to compact, especially in animation, the profundity of this style of knowledge so that it can land in your heart and you can take action on it. Remember, Bitcoin metabolizes fiat infrastructure. Mycorrhizal biomimicry metabolizes self-dealing. Re-architect society based on the separation of money and state. We have to unfuck the money. Again, the first and only implementation of absolute scarcity. A global, near-instant, apolitical settlement system. Neutral money not easily captured by special interests. Uncensorable medium of exchange. Democratization of basic financial services. And a non-sovereign store of value with negligible barrier to entry. This inclusive stakeholding, mycorrhizal biomimicry, will lead to increased neurodiversity, gift actualization across all of those critical fields that we desperately need people to achieve their goals in. Remember where fiat is extremely fragile and where Bitcoin is not. And consider the idea that Bitcoin will absorb all of the best features of the altcoins after they've been tested in the market. This is one of the most profound things that I've ever seen in my life here. Slime mold, figuring out how to design the Japanese subway system more effectively than engineers. Patterns everywhere. Find the patterns, embody the patterns, become pattern god. And that's how you see the mycorrhizal networks and the Bitcoin pattern and analogize them. You'll win if you can do this. our multi-thousand year relationship evolutionary with fungi. Decentralized finance, DeFi, get pumped. Get pumped. The mycelial archetype is embedded in our species. It's an emergent property of biology, which means the World Wide Web and Bitcoin were inevitable. Again, we are biomimicking our civilization architectures after mycorrhizal networks. That's what Bitcoin and decentralization are. Get on board early. Get on board now. Let's do this. Get pumped. Read The Internet of Money by Andreas Antonopoulos. Read The Book of Satoshi by Phil Champagne. These books will onboard you onto the industry. Go and watch a bunch of videos. Go and learn. Go and buy some crypto, some Bitcoin. You can easily go do that on Coinbase. Go and get involved and tell your friends about it. Tell your friends that you're starting to transition more and more away from fiat currency. And let's do this, guys. Teach them about mycorrhizal networks. Go and watch Suzanne Simard's TED Talk on the mycorrhizal networks. It's very, very enriching as well. That's all. Wanted to keep this second distillation stream of my notes shorter than that first one on the California water supply. Go and watch that one if you haven't yet. It's profoundly fascinating. This one, again, is on fungi, Bitcoin, and decentralization. I love you very much. Thank you for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't. Like the video. Share it with other people. And get involved in this decentralization renaissance. Get involved. Let's do this. Much love. Talk to you soon. Peace. Build the future. Manifest your dreams into the world.